طيب we should begin inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. So before I begin, if I can just get a confirmation from anyone who's watching on our YouTube, on our Facebook, on our Instagram or Twitter to just let me know if they're hearing me and if they're hearing us loud and clear, inshallah. If we can get anyone to comment on any of those three platforms. Anyone to comment on any of those three platforms, just so we can begin bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Just want to make sure everyone is hearing what we're talking about here. Okay, so I am getting confirmation here on Facebook. So before I begin, inshallah, I do want to point your attention to the fact that we are holding our classes on a regular basis. Tonight's class is with Sheikh Abdullah Hakim quick. It's on the 40 Hadith of Islamic revival. On Sunday morning at 11:30, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, there is a class with Sheikh Ahmed Kuti. It is a class on how to maximize the blessings of Ramadan in the times of COVID-19. There's another class that's being held next week, and this coming up week is the last week before Ramadan comes, and inshallah we're going to basically show you our programs for Ramadan. Inshallah, it's going to be a lot more beneficial programs that are geared towards the month itself, inshallah ta'ala. Before we begin, I just want to ask all of you who are watching on YouTube to go ahead and really what we want you to do is subscribe to our channel itself, so you can hear us when we post videos, and you can also know when we post new things without us sending these emails out to you, inshallah. And without any further ado, inshallah, Sheikh Abdullah, if you can begin, inshallah, your lecture. Barakallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallam ala sayyidil awwaleen wal akhirin nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, and upon his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. My beloved brothers and sisters, I begin with the greeting words of the righteous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, this is another opportunity in our onward study of the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to rejoice, to be so thankful for the benefit of being part of the last ummah. And this last nation of prophets who came to every nation and every tribe has been sealed by our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And there were a number of differences between him and the other prophets. And one of the key differences that he made known to his companions is that they were sent to their tribes, but he was sent to all of humanity and the jinn. And so this is so important to us because the message that we are getting is a universal message. And this is the way that we are looking at the traditions. We are looking at them in a universal way. And so we find ourselves in a very unique time in history. We find ourselves in part of this last ummah, which according to what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, would be the largest ummah of all of the prophets from the beginning of time. We are people who live in just about all parts of the world. We have 26% of the Earth's population. Our countries are blessed with great mineral wealth, great natural resources. We have most of the oil wealth and the gas wealth and underneath our lands. And when you look at the world and you look at the problems happening in the Muslim world, you'll find in most cases that it's something not on the surface politically, but it's under the ground. And the colonial nations, in exploiting our countries, focused on different parts of the Muslim world and made it appear as though there's a crisis on the outside, but really underneath was a major plunder or a major source for them to exploit. An example of that is Somalia and the Horn of Africa. Most of us know the Horn of Africa with Somali pirates, and we know it as a very uh, dangerous part of the world, where boats are coming through the Red Sea and they are attacked by pirates, and people are living in Somalia in a state of poverty. It's a huge desert. It's the opposite. The reality is of Somalia is it's extremely rich country. And from early history, Somalia was known as Punt, and Punt was doing business with the ancient Egyptians. And it was known to be like a trading house for the frankincense and myrrh of Arabia, and also the gold and minerals and ostrich feathers and ebony and ivory coming out of Africa. So Somalia, in looking at the 19th century and 20th century, it has the largest coastline in Africa. And while I was living in South Africa, a delegation came to visit the South Africans in order to get experts in minerals and how to extract minerals from the earth. And they visited the Muslim Judicial Council. And I was head of the Dawah department, so I met the vice president of Somaliland. That is what they call Hargeisa. That is in the north. And what was interesting is that they were in South Africa because there are huge oil deposits in the seas outside of their country. And also underneath their land was phosphates and uranium and all types of minerals. And so the media says one thing, the propaganda or what is put out about Somalia is that it is a poor place, but the reality is it's extremely rich, but the people do not have access to that power that is under the ground. So this is the state of the Muslim world. Extreme riches are underneath our soil. Our young people are blessed with being a very large part of our population. When studies were done in different parts of the Muslim world, they found out that young people make up somewhere around 60% of the population. And so we are a community of the future. Whereas countries like Europe or continents like Europe and United States and other parts of the Western world are graying nations. And so literally the future belongs to the youth. So our countries are rich. We have large armies. We have potential. The Quran and the Sunnah, that the educational resources are actually there. We have a lot of information stored up. We have a history of respect from the past. We had one of the greatest civilizations in history. Islamic civilization was really the foundation of the European Renaissance, the foundation of modern day Europe. And so quiet as it's kept, we have an amazing potential. But the problem is, as we looked at in the earlier session, with this great riches and potential, there is frustration. Because although we have some of the richest countries on earth per capita, we also have some of the poorest countries in the world. Although we have great standing armies, we are feeling humiliation on the ground. And so this is what you could call a contradiction. You have potential, but you're not using it. You have great scholars, but they're arguing over trivia, arguing over minor points, instead of taking that Islamic knowledge, applying it to the world, and bringing results. When we look at the world today, we find that the world is crying out for direction. It's in a pandemic, the Corona-19 pandemic. And so the scientists are telling them that they need to be positive. They need to be more spiritual. And religions are actually being encouraged. The great religions of the world are asking for prayer services, and even individuals like the President of the United States calling for a day of prayer. Also, we find that people today are crying out for practical means to protect themselves against virus. And so the discussion on most people's lips is about tahara. It's about cleaning up. It's about washing their hands, washing their clothing, washing their place. This is part of Islam. People are talking about hand sanitizers. which are mostly alcohol. But the word alcohol, al-kuhul, it's an Arabic word. And Ibn Hayyan, the father of modern chemistry, is the one who developed the modern form of distillation of alcohol. Quarantining was actually done from back in the time of the Khalifa Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anh, who quarantined people who had leprosy and gave to those areas of people who had the pandemic, because there was also the ta'un of amwas. So people who had this disease would be quarantined, and the government from the awqaf, from the waqf, or the money that has been given in trust to the state, a special sadaqah, a special charity or stipend would be given to all of the people who were in quarantine. So the methods that are being taken today are actually part of the Islamic heritage. This is the amazing thing about the potential that we have, the lifestyle that we have, that for most of us is not completed. There are only aspects of the lifestyle that we are living in. So we're crying for change. We're crying for the COVID-19 to be lifted from us. We're crying for political change. We're crying for economic change. The world is about to go into recession. And so the paper notes that we have are about to become useless. So people want Islamic economy. That is the economy based upon gold and silver and products that have intrinsic value. We're crying for change, but Allah tells us, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. In Surah Ar-Ra'd, verse 11, Allah tells us He will not change the condition of a people till they change that which is in themselves. So internal change really is the key. And this internal change can bring about the help of Allah Azza wa Jal, which inshallah would take us out of this calamity that we are living in throughout the world, and especially the Muslim world. And so the question that I asked myself, and I want to be a little bit personal here because this 40 hadith is personal. The question I asked myself in being given this burden as being an imam in a large masjid and traveling to different parts of the Muslim world, how can we make Islam relevant to people in the lives that they are living? How can we answer real live questions through the teachings of Prophet Muhammad SAW, so that the Jumu'ah khutbah, that our talks that we are giving is not just entertainment. It's not something to put you to sleep. Some people told me that they will go to the masjid in their break so they get a nice sleep. Then they can go back to work after they've had their sleep in the masjid. That's not the way the Prophet Muhammad SAW used to deal on Jumu'ah. It was a dynamic talk that the people got, and even described that he would talk as though, in some cases, like an army was in the mountains just in back of them. So he is dealing with al-waqiyah. He is dealing with the reality on the ground. And so over the years, I traveled to over 62 countries, visiting Muslims and doing research and trying to present something to the different communities that would be relevant to them. I found that it was overwhelming. And in those days, and this is before computers and chips and hard drives, I couldn't carry books with me in that number. And I'm not a hafiz. I didn't memorize hundreds of hadith. So therefore, I needed to go through my sources, and I went through the different hadith that I had recorded in my talks over about a 20-year period. And I found that there were certain hadith that were repeating themselves over and over and over again. And these traditions, when I put it together with scholars in Cape Town, I found that these traditions actually had a methodology, and that is Islamic revival. So we set it in the form of Imam an-Nawawi. And so it is called the 40 Hadith of Islamic Revival. And this is the set of hadith that I have here. It is available to anybody online. If you contact me at my website, www.hakimquick.com, you'll be able to, through PayPal, you'll be able to get a copy of the 40 Hadith on Islamic Revival. This is not Imam an-Nawawi's 40 hadith, but it is set in a similar form, but it is dealing with real live situations that we are facing in the world today. And so we want to look at these 40 hadith and to look at this methodology. And in line with the traditions, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah and all of the different teachers who used the 40 hadith setup would always begin the 40 hadith with a version of the hadiths of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And this famous tradition is one which sets the basis for the Islamic revival. And in this case, in hadith number 1, I used a version which is a more abbreviated version. There are longer ones. But this version basically is saying that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu reported on the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, "Innamal a'malu bin niyat wa innama likulli imri'in ma nawa, faman kanat hijratuhu ila dunya yusibuha aw ila imra'atin yankihuha fahijratuhu ila ma hajara ilay." That's the shortened version. The longer version that you may have heard, "Innamal a'malu bin niyat wa innama likulli imri'in ma nawa, faman kanat hijratuhu ila Allahi wa rasuli fahijratuhu ila Allahi wa rasuli wa man kanat hijratuhu lidunya yusibuha aw imra'atan yankihuha fahijratuhu ila ma hajara ilay." So the hadith is saying surely actions are based on intentions. Innamal a'malu bin niyat. So niyya is the singular. And surely every person will get what he intends. So whoever has migrated to achieve a worldly goal, or in order to get married to a woman, or it could be a man, then his migration will be for exactly what he intends. So what this hadith is showing, and it's the basis of the revival itself. We're talking about making change. We're talking about bringing alive our Islam in a new environment. We are in an environment of pandemic. We are in an environment of the 21st century, the cyberspace, the major corporations and urban cities. How can we practice Islam? How can we practice the teachings of a man who lived 1400 years ago in Arabia? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala miraculously, through the Quran itself and through his sayings, have given us principles that we could live by these principles, and we could interpret the principles, maintaining the sanctity of the principle, but look at it in light of the society that we are living in. So the basis of the revival is the intention. It starts on the inside. Remember what Allah said. He will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves, the niyyah. And this is very important. And I remember some years ago at an ISNA convention in Canada, we had a very large crowd of people, and I was sitting on the table with Sheikh Jafar Sheikh Idris. And he is a well-known Sudanese scholar, very loved by people here in the West. And he stood in front of the crowd one day, and I was sitting next to him, and he shocked the people because he said that, "I have surveyed what you have said. I have looked at, what you are doing here in Canada and in America. And to be honest with you, when I look at the sources, when I go into our Islamic jurisprudence, I cannot find any valid reason for you to be living here. If you're coming here because the Canadians have, or Americans have, large supermarkets and there's always stocked with food, or did you come here because the lights stay on all the time? The water continues to run. Many of our countries, you have to get your water at a certain time during the day because the water goes off. So people, because of plenty or because of advanced education, they migrate. That is an economic migrant. And remember, an economic migrant would fall in the hadith, because the hadith is saying if you traveled or if you migrated for worldly gain, that's all you're going to get. There are some people who wanted to get married, so they came to the West because they'd like to marry a Muslimah or a Muslim man from the West, or they've heard about the big cities and they have this wrong understanding. But if that's what the migration is about, then that's all you get. So Sheikh Jafar said to the people, you're here illegally because I can't find any reason for you to be here in Canada. It's not in the books, because usually when people migrated in Islamic history, they would migrate for the reasons of business. So they would leave the Dar al-Islam, they would leave the abode of peace, the Muslim world, and travel into the other nations, do business, and come back. Or they would migrate for political reasons. And so you'd have people who travel because they're diplomats. Or they would migrate for reasons of defense. The enemy is threatening, and so they go to face the enemy. Or it might be because they are spreading the message of Islam. But nobody migrates because they want food. Nobody migrates just because there's a bigger university. And so the people were left dumbfounded. That evening, they went to his room, and his hostel, his hotel room he was staying in, a big crowd was out inside of there. And the next day, Sheikh Jafar came back and he said, I changed my fatwa. You showed me that there are valid reasons for people being in this part of the world. In some cases, you showed me that it's so bad in the so-called Muslim world that you can practice more Islam here in Canada or America than you can in your own country. You showed me that the conditions are so bad, the droughts, the political conditions, that people are literally forced out of their country into the Western world. So he changed this fatwa and he said, you should include with your new intention, it should be iqamat ad-din, that you should be establishing the religion. You should establish the call to the good. And so, yes, you live in the conditions here that are maybe better than your country, but your intention has changed because you want to establish the religion. So you will be part of a masjid, you will help Islamic programs, you will give to the poor, you will call to the good and forbid evil. You don't just live here in Canada or in America just to eat food. So that was an amazing look at intentions and how important people's intentions are when they travel to different parts of the world. So the basis for the change, the basis for tajdeed, revival, the basis for bringing our Islam alive is the intention. And in the circumstances we are living in today, we have to maintain our intentions. It's very difficult sometimes with the trials and tests that we are in, but we need to maintain our intentions. So this world is a very strange place. And I want to take you to the second hadith of these traditions. And it's talking about, because these next two hadiths sort of give us the scenario that we are living in. And I'm shocked, again, I'm shocked to see that the Prophet Muhammad SAW, it's as though he's talking to us, directly to us. And the closer and closer we get to the day of resurrection is the more these hadiths actually come alive. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh reports that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu has said, Ummati hadihi ummatun marhuma. Ummati hadihi ummatun marhuma, laysa alayha adhabun fil akhirah, adhabuha fid dunya, al-fitan wa zalazal wal qatl. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu said, this, my nation, my ummah, is a nation that has mercy on it. Its punishment will not be in the hereafter, but the punishment will be in this life, in the dunya. That being fitan, earthquakes, and murder or genocide. This is reported in Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, and Ahmed. It's authentic hadith. It's an amazing hadith. Because if you look at the world today, so what the hadith is saying is that this nation has mercy on it. Because if you have tawheed, if you have that grain of tawheed within your being and you leave this world, that one time, inshallah, in the next life, even if a believer was punished for a period of time, they would leave the fire because that grain of tawheed is inside of them. So the ultimate punishment is not in the next life, but this world, there would be punishment. And that punishment is a wake-up call. It's like an alarm clock that is going off. And three things would be this wake-up call. And I studied Islamic history, and Allah knows best. It's happened over and over and over again, and it is repeating itself right now in front of our eyes. Number one, fitna, which is the plural of, is the singular of fitan. And a fitna is a trial, it's a test, it's a gray area. For some people, it's a punishment. But for some people, fitna is like it's a temptation. It's a tribulation, a trial that they're going through. And it's amazing because the word fitna is coming from the concept of purification. So when you want to purify metal, you can actually use the verb for this, fatanta dhab, that I actually purified my gold or my silver, and that is by putting it to the fire. When you tan your hide, you put it to the fire. And so a fitna is this type of trial that because of this calamity that you're going through, it actually gives you a chance to raise your daraja, to raise your position. Sometimes the fitna is just straight out temptation. And we can see it today, probably more than any other generation, because in terms of immorality, it is being pumped throughout the world. The cell phones, the televisions, the equipment that people are using. Now it's even in our wristwatch. It's a fitna like no other generation has ever seen before. Number two, earthquakes. And this could also refer to natural catastrophes. And if you look at the great earthquakes that have happened in the past 40 years or so, you will see that the majority of them and the tsunamis that came out of it are actually hitting Muslim countries. And so this is part of our punishment in this life to wake up. And the last, of course, is qatl, and that is genocide. And when you look at the refugees of the world, you will see that the Muslim world has the largest refugee population. What has happened in Iraq and in Syria is horrendous. What has happened in Yemen, it's unbelievable. What has happened in Myanmar with the Rohingya Muslims, it's unbelievable. What has happened in Central Africa, it's unbelievable. We saw just before Bosnia-Herzegovina, we are seeing the Palestinian people. We are seeing this murder, this genocide happening, and right in front of the eyes of the world. And so this tradition here is an amazing one. It's a sad one, but at least it helps us to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired the last Prophet ﷺ as to what would go on when we went into time and how we can explain it. And I have gone into communities and people would say, especially young people or new Muslims, they would say, how is this possible? We're Muslims. How can Muslims die? How can the earthquake strike the Muslim world? How can the COVID-19 strike Muslims? Some people believe it will never strike us. And so they go into their holy places and they touch the wall and they touch each other and they hug and whatnot. And we see what happened in the countries where this actually went down. So this is setting a stage for us. It's giving us that prophetic look at what we're actually going through today. The next hadith is also an amazing one. And this is a famous hadith. And again, when people want to know what is going on and want to ask the question, what could Rasulullah ﷺ have said about this? Remember the great Gulf Wars, when the nations of the world were literally pouring into the Muslim world. Armadas were coming in with a number of different nations sending their soldiers. And then the attack on Iraq, the attacks on Syria, the attacks on different parts of the Muslim world. Thawban, radiallahu anh, he reported that the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, has informed him, and this is a hadith, a well-known tradition, and it goes as follows. يوشك الأمم أن تداعى عليكم كما تداعى الأكلة إلى قصعتها فقال قائل ومن قلة نحن يومئذ قال بل أنتم يومئذ كثير ولكنكم غثاء كغثاء السيل ولينزعن الله من صدور عدوكم المهابة منكم وليقذفن الله في قلوبكم الوهن فقال قائل يا رسول الله وما الوهن قال حب الدنيا وكراهية الموت. So the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, is reported to have said, the nations are about to call one another and descend upon you, just as those who are eating invite others in sharing food. So just imagine this now. You have somebody who's got a nice table spread and he's about to eat and he sees other people. So he says, Ta'al, come and eat with me. Come and share. So literally, the Prophet ﷺ is saying the nations are going to call each other. No, you come to the Middle East. No, you come. Everybody. They will descend upon you like this, in the same way as a person inviting people to his food. The companions, peace and radiallahu anh, they had the right to ask the Prophet ﷺ questions. And so somebody asked him, and this is an excellent question, will that be because we are few in number at that time? Now, this is a logical question, because how could Muslims be in a large number when we have izzah, we have strength, and the enemy is pouring down upon us and making fun of us and enjoying us like food? But the Prophet ﷺ said, he answered, no. At that time, you will be numerous. Bal antum yawma'idhin kathir. Lakinnakum ghutha ka ghutha as-sayl. You will be the froth on the torrent. Allah will remove the fear of you from the hearts of your enemies and will put a weakness into your hearts. Look at this hadith now. So the Prophet ﷺ, let's go back a little bit, is saying, the enemies are going to pounce on you. And they say, are we small in number? He says, no, you'll be numerous. You'll be all over the place. But you will be like the froth on the water. I remember in Cape Town, we used to look down at the ocean and you see foam. So the foam is coming in sticks and twigs, and you can see it on a river or a torrent as well. And you look down and you see the foam and you see the twigs, and you see the sticks. And if the water goes to the right, then the foam and the twigs go to the right. If the water goes to the left, it goes to the left. Whatever direction the power of the water pulls them in, they go in that direction because there's no roots. It's not firmly tied to the bottom. And so this is a beautiful example that you be like ghutha as-sayl. So you have thousands of Muslims, millions, you go to the Kaaba. Look at us today, crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking for change, making dua here and there, but we're not seeing any change. And then, this is an amazing description. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will remove the fear of you from the hearts of your enemies. Now, this fear is not the fear, the wild fear of a raging, mad dog coming at you. No, this is different now. This is izzah. This is the respect that Muslims are supposed to have. One of the best examples of this that I found, again, was in South Africa. South Africa is an amazing country. And I traveled to one of the big game reserves in the eastern side of the country. This is Kruger Park, it's called. And it's not a zoo, where the animals are like prisoners of war locked in cages. No, this is the size of the state of Rhode Island in the United States. And so the animals are literally living in their natural places. You see lions, you see tigers, or not tigers, you see elephants, you will see the jamus, the hippos, and so many different animals. And we were traveling along in a raised up vehicle. The driver of the vehicle was driving, and at the same time next to him was a shotgun. This is real now. And so as we moved along, as we moved down the road, we came to a pride of lions. This is a group of lions, about 7 of them on the side of the road. And when the vehicle came next to the lions, we started to look to the right, and the driver said, "Don't look them in their eyes. Never look a lion in his eyes, because the lion has got izzah." All the animals ran from us. Even elephants are nervous. Leopards are nervous. Everything is nervous. The hippo, when they see a human being. But the lions looked at us and sort of yawned and just turned to the right and went back to sleep. Why? Because the lion has izzah. The lion has might, and izzah is a type of might, a type of respect. From the word izzah also comes aziz, and aziz is something which is dear. And this is the way the Muslim world historically was. I remember that there were many people who they spoke about the Khulafa Rashidin, the rightly guided caliphs. And they said, okay, there's no Islam after that. No, that's not a reality. It was not as perfect or as good as it was in their time. However, in the time of the Umayyad dynasty, with their political weaknesses, in the time of the Abbasids, with their political weaknesses, Islam had izzah. The Muslims were respected around the world. And it is reported in the Abbasid period, in the time of Mu'tasim Billah, that a Muslim woman traveling in the Christian world was kidnapped. She cried out, "Wa Mu'tasima." And somehow her cry, or news of her cry, came to the Khalifa. And the Khalifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen of the believers, he sent a letter to the Christian king and he said, "Release the Muslim woman. Because if you don't release her, I will send an army to you whose front will reach you and its back will still be coming from us." And when the Christian king heard this, he said, "Hear and obey." And he released the Muslim woman and sent her back to the Muslim world with bodyguards. That's one Muslim woman. Imagine what has happened to Muslims in the past 100 years. Horrendous situations that went on. I remember in Bosnia-Herzegovina, wal-iyadhu billah, the Serbians had rape camps where they would literally rape hundreds of Muslim women and cage them in like animals. No respect. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will take the fear of you out of the hearts of your enemies. No more respect. No more izzah. And he will put a weakness into your hearts. Wahan. And then somebody asked, "O Messenger of Allah, what is this weakness?" And he told them, "Hubbid dunya wa karahiyatul maut." You will love the life of this world. And you will hate to die. You'll be afraid to die. And when this happens, this is a calamity. Look at the prophetic words of what is happening now, and how the love of the dunya has come into the hearts of so many of the Muslims, fighting over trivia, fighting over a few coins, loving the life of this world, and not recognizing the importance of the hereafter, that we are in a transition period. So these two traditions of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ give us an amazing background to our 40 Hadith of Islamic revival. So the basis of the revival starts within ourselves. It starts with the intention. And then, as we will learn in the next class, because we're hoping these classes will continue right through in Ramadan. I want to continue the 40 hadith, and I want you to give feedback to us to continue, because these areas are important. Because one of the questions we need to be asking ourselves when we come out of Ramadan, when the COVID-19 is lifted from us, will we go back to the same way that we're living? Or can we revive Islam? Can we bring back the principles of Islam in a way which is relevant to the world that we are living in today? That is the question. And these 40 hadith of Islamic revival, this is part of the answer. Over years, 40 years in the field, teaching, going to over 62 countries, hadiths were repeating themselves over and over and over again, that all of our communities need to be revived. And so we want to look at these hadith while we are fasting, while we are going through this month, because this is part of Ramadan. Remember what Allah tells us, that this month, Hudan lin-nas wa bayyinatin min al-huda wal-furqan, that Ramadan is guidance to humanity and clear evidence from the guidance and from that which separates truth from falsehood. And so the 40 hadith of Islamic revival, we have reached number 3, and we will continue on. We recognize the fact that the Islamic revival begins within. It starts with the intention, and we will see that it goes to the heart. It goes to the heart of the individual. And from the inside, it starts to go out. It is not outside in. It's not putting on a tall hat or growing a long beard or covering your face or having a nice thobe. That's not the reality of the situation. The reality is it's inside. Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves. It's in our hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to change what is in ourselves, to change our intentions, to raise ourselves up, to purify what is inside of us, so that we can have his eternal, majestic help to be on our side, to change our conditions. It's very serious in the Muslim world. It's very serious for all over the place. We are in need of this change. We are in need for our du'as to be answered. We are in need for our fasting to be answered. And our revolution, our revival starts within ourselves and it goes out. It touches the heart, it touches the character, it touches our interpersonal relationships, and it naturally goes out till eventually, inshallah, it can reach our communities, it will reach the world. That is how the original Islamic revival happened, when the last messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, revived and completed the message of all the prophets who came from the beginning of time. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on me and you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, wa akhira da'wana, and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. May Allah Azza wa Jalla bless you, inshallah, and accept of you the best of deeds. I do want to remind all of our viewers and attendees at this moment to go ahead and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know I keep saying this all the time, but this is really essential, really important for us to have a connection with you, inshallah ta'ala. And if you're not following us on Facebook, so if you're watching us on YouTube and you're not following us on Facebook, please do go ahead and follow us on Facebook. We're also on Instagram and also on Twitter, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We're holding classes on a regular basis. This week will be the last week, inshallah ta'ala, before our Ramadan begins. But let's talk about this week, inshallah. So on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Toronto time, we have maximizing the benefits, the blessings of Ramadan with Sheikh Ahmed Kuti. This is very essential, I guess, really class about how to get the best out of this Ramadan in light of this COVID-19 pandemic that's happening, on this crisis that's happening around the world. Next week, we are holding our classes, inshallah, 7 o'clock every single night. That's on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and also Friday, inshallah ta'ala. Please do visit our website, that's islam.ca. And before we go, I do want to give a shout out to, I saw a couple people who are actually commenting on the person who's typing the notes as we are going. So the person who's on this closed captioning is Sister Aisha Amin. May Allah Azza wa Jalla reward her, inshallah. She's also she's always been doing this for us. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless her for this, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair once again. And if you have any questions, do please send them out. Our email address is info@islam.ca, or you can email to the Sheikh's email address directly, or even post it on these postings. We always follow up on comments and questions on our YouTube, on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Barakallahu fikum. May Allah Azza wa Jalla protect our Sheikh. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.